This is a republic, if you can keep it, with Mark Brewer and Jeff Timmer.
I'm Jeff Timmer. Welcome to yet another Taco Tuesday episode of A Republic, if you can keep it. Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General, joins Meatloaf, Joan Rivers, Dennis Rodman, Sinbad, Dionne Warwick, Andrew Dice Clay, Omarosa, and Kristi Noem.
You're fired. Get out of here. You're fired.
I'm Walt Sorg, sitting in for Mark Brewer. I think he's stuck at the Strait of Hormuz right now, just trying to get out. Alyssa Slotkin, speaking in Iowa, confirms what we've been saying for weeks. She is open to running for president. My belief, for what it's worth, is that she'll be on the 2028 shortlist for vice president, unless, of course, she's constitutionally prohibited because the nominee is either Gretchen Whitmer or Pete Buttigieg. You can only have one person on the ticket from a state, and all three of them, of course, are from Michigan.
Two more special elections around the country this week, two more sharp turns to Democrats. In Wisconsin, liberal Chris Taylor cruised to an easy victory in the state Senate Supreme Court race with 60% of the vote, expanding the liberal majority on Wisconsin's court to 5-2.
In Georgia, Democrat Sean Harris lost by about 12 percentage points in the race to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene, but he shifted the district 25 points to the left. Trump won that district by 37 percentage points back in 2024.
A national Republican PAC said Monday it's dumping $45 million, that's a lot of zeros,
wow,
into Michigan's open U.S. Senate race as an initial investment to help presumptive GOP nominee Mike Rogers flip the seat from Democratic control. The operative word is initial, meaning even more millions will flow into Michigan from Republican sources. But Democrats and democracy lovers out there listening to us need not fret. Whoever wins the Democratic primary this August will have tens of millions of dollars invested on their behalf, too.
Donald Trump is calling on Congress to give Pete Hegseth a staggering $1.7 trillion over the next year. To fund it, Trump wants to cut virtually every other federal program, including a 23% cut for NASA, even as those 4 astronauts head home after going to the dark side of the moon.
One item calling for a major increase in spending, White House repairs and renovations. Trump wants to spend $377 million fixing up the place, an 860% increase.
Hey, maybe they're going to do more bathrooms in there.
Yeah. Two more major league grifts from Trump. Semaphore is reporting that Trump has directed the State Department to send $1.25 billion without any congressional appropriation or authorization to do so to Trump's Board of Peace. The transfer effectively places the money directly into the hands of Donald Trump under his control as the board's chairman. Trump and the board's executive control funding for the Board of Peace, and Trump selects the executive board personally. Trump will continue to do so even after his second term ends in January of 2029.
The Justice Department has settled for roughly $1.2 million, a lawsuit from Michael Flynn, the one-time national security advisor to President Trump, who pleaded guilty during the Republicans' first term to lying to the FBI about his conversations with a top Russian diplomat, and of course was later pardoned by Trump. Bottom line, if Trump likes you, taxpayers will pay you even if you lie to the FBI.
In the race for Michigan governor on the Republican side, John James is ducking yet another candidate debate, even as Perry Johnson is eating John James's lunch at this point. This debate set for the end of the month in vote-rich Oakland County. On the Democratic side, Governor Whitmer says she will not endorse a candidate in the race for U.S. Senate or for Secretary of State. She earlier ruled out an endorsement in the race for the gubernatorial nomination.
Jeff, let's start with the Slotkin story. It's not surprising, to me at least, that she's been toying with the idea of running for president. The surprises are really her openness about it. I've had the privilege of knowing Alyssa since she first ran for Congress in 2018, and I was working at the same time on the anti-gerrymandering campaign. I learned early on she's a really effective campaigner when talking with individuals or in small groups. Her intelligence, candor, relatability, and compassion really stands out. Her retail political skills allowed her to flip a Republican congressional seat and then win statewide, even as Trump was carrying Michigan. But would those skills translate to a national constituency?
Let me start by saying I think Slotkin has been taking all the right steps as U.S. Senator over these past couple of years. And it's natural that someone in her position with her background, I think you're right, these just innate ability to perform as a candidate, but also her professional background in national security and intelligence with the CIA, buttressed with her 8 years on Capitol Hill, give her I think a very unique skill set among Democratic aspirants. A very centrist, flipped a longtime Republican district back in 18, won a very competitive, hard-fought victory for the U.S. Senate, running ahead of Kamala Harris. As Donald Trump was winning Michigan, Slotkin was retaining a Democratic-held U.S. Senate seat. It's just natural with Michigan being maybe the pivotal state as we look toward 2028 and the future of presidential politics, that certainly there's been talk over the years of Governor Whitmer making a potential run or looking at a run, and the fact,
but not from Whitmer.
Well, yeah. Well, from, Slotkin was asked, you're right. She said, yeah, I could consider it. But I'm also not wedded. She said, in her remarks in Iowa, the fact that she's in Iowa always raises eyebrows. Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the traditional early role they have played in presidential politics this last half century, although that's changing in the Democratic nominating calendar. There's other states that will go long before Iowa and New Hampshire do on the Democratic side. Does her retail politics translate to a presidential campaign? No. Unless there is a race in Iowa or New Hampshire, you don't do much retail politicking in the nomination battle. I mean, you do some, and those states, Iowa with their caucuses and New Hampshire with this, it's kind of like when a presidential campaign in New Hampshire, having been through one a decade ago, out in New Hampshire, watching that, it's almost like you're running for town council or mayor of these towns around New Hampshire, the way that the presidential campaigns have historically operated there. But with the national Democrats having changed the order of states to make states that are more diverse, more representative of the Democratic voters, unlike all-white Iowa and all-white New Hampshire, I don't know that she's going to get to exercise those skills. What it really comes down to at the presidential level is money. Do you have the resources to get on to the real stage, to be taken seriously as a frontline contender? And her ability to raise money over her time in Congress has been extraordinary. The network she has built across the country has been extraordinary. And so she has the potential out there. Now, I know a lot of those donors that she has courted are also the same donors who have given to all the other aspirants, whether it's Kamala Harris or Josh Shapiro or Ruben Gallego or any of the other on the deep bench the Democrats have. So whether Alyssa will ultimately run, I don't know. Could she win? Yes. When I first heard of Barack Obama was when he was going to give the keynote address in 2004, John Kerry's nominating convention for the Democrats. And it's like the state senator from Illinois, okay, then he gets elected to the U.S. Senate. And, Obama was a generational talent as a politician. It really led a movement at the right time, kind of catching lightning in a bottle. It was a unicorn. It really became the first 21st century campaign that in a digital age was a digital campaign while everybody else was running analog. And it really set him apart. Could Alyssa be a transformational politician? I don't know. I think that she would, given her well-established centrist roots, tethering herself firmly to the 50-yard line and not playing to the progressive extremes that have certain impact within the Democratic Party. It will be interesting to see how that plays out on a national stage. It served her well in her elections in Michigan. It served her well in her race for the U.S. Senate, certainly. But I think it would serve her well in a general election. But a general election voter audience is not the same as a Democratic national primary voter audience across the country. The voters tend to skew much more progressive than the national electorate as a whole. So we'll have to see. But I think the thought that she would be in the discussion makes a lot of sense. Certainly that she would be in discussion for a place in the conversation about who would be on the ticket with whoever the ultimate nominee is. A woman senator, national security background from Michigan. Wow. I mean, that checks a shit ton of boxes on what you would look for to round out a ticket. So a lot of things will happen between now and 2028, including whether or not we actually even have real elections anymore, which we'll find out this
that would help.
So we're thinking of this and looking into the future through the prism of normalcy. We live in anything but normal times. So, it's fun for junkies like us to speculate on this and for stories like this to be written, but it's way too early. Alyssa said the right things about, hey, I'm working on majorities in the Senate. Now, the Senate is very much up for grabs. In Iowa, where she was, has become a very competitive opportunity for the Democrats to take one from the Republican. Iowa, Ohio, Texas, Montana, Alaska, all Republican-held seats, in addition to the Republican-held open seat in North Carolina, where Roy Cooper, the recently retired Democratic governor, is just running away with that race. And it might not even become much of a race ultimately in this climate, given the enormous lead he has in the early polls. And Susan Collins in Maine, that state has been so quirky, and the Democratic primary there is very unpredictable, with outgoing Governor Janet Mills being the preferred choice of national Democrats.
She's getting swamped in the polls.
They've got a lobster fisherman who's held a lot of other positions, who's kind of caught some fire, has some controversies, but is not only holding his own, but many are now expecting he could well defeat Governor Mills in the Democratic primary, which I happen to think is not the best choice for the Democrats to beat Susan Collins. This is one no harm, no foul, get the candidate who's closest to a centrist. Maine has a history as a Republican state. Traditional Yankee Republicans.
Margaret Chase Smith.
Susan Collins and Olympia Snow represented Maine in the Senate for years. Maine has had a Republican governor for much of the last 50 years, even as Democrats were getting elected to the House, Democrats controlling the state government or the state legislature. And it's been a reliable 3 or 4 electoral votes for the Democrats. but it may not always be. And Maine is one of those quirky states that also awards electoral votes by who wins each of their 2 congressional districts. The Democrats have a great opportunity. Alyssa Slotkin is keeping her eye on the ball, as is Ruben Gallego and others who are out there campaigning. They each have unique set of background. When it comes to running for president, there are a lot of, I've said this before, use this analogy, great hitters at the AAA level who, when they get to the major leagues, turn out they can't hit the off-speed pitch or the breaking ball at the major league level the way they were able to at getting elected statewide.
Yeah,
And
we had
so,
President Fred Thompson at one point, and President Rudy Giuliani, and
Yeah.
it goes on and on and on and on.
President John Edwards, or
yeah.
President Mario Cuomo, who never even got out of the gates. He dominated his state and was always in the discussion, but could never make that adjustment to the national stage. And so you have to wait and see. And the only way to wait and see, or to see if it actually happens, is when they start to face live pitching in a campaign, testing the waters. Ultimately, I think, you talked in the opening about Pete Buttigieg and Gretchen Whitmer, also both very much in the conversation about, national Democrats and who might run in 2028. When it comes to solving that constitutional conflict that you mentioned there, you can't have the nominee from the same, the nominee and the vice presidential nominee from the same state. True. But back in 2000, George W. Bush from Texas and Dick Cheney from Texas at the time, they settled that by Dick Cheney re-registering in Wyoming, where he had long served in Congress. That kind of thing. If Pete Buttigieg was the nominee, Pete Buttigieg could register to vote in South Bend again.
Could go back home to Indiana.
Yeah, right. That's a speed bump, perhaps, not necessarily a immovable barrier to Buttigieg and Slotkin being on the same ticket. Now, Whitmer and Slotkin being on the same ticket, I don't think you have that flexibility.
No, I don't think Gretchen's going to run, quite honestly.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think for Alyssa, the best bet is if another governor whose name isn't Whitmer is the nominee. She's a really good fit for any of a half dozen governors who may be running, whether it's Beshear or Newsom or Shapiro, or probably leaving out 3 or 4 others who have ambitions in that direction. That's probably her best bet. If it's another member of Congress, a United States senator or a House member, I think that diminishes her chances because she doesn't fill in as many blanks as she would with a governor, and would provide tremendous balance on the ticket and tremendous credibility because they can't accuse her of being a career politician. She's certainly not. She's certainly very bright and won't put her foot in her mouth in the campaign trail. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about for a long time, and we'll probably be talking right up to the convention. The other thing you mentioned, too, about all these Senate seats that are in play that we never thought would be in play, to me, that's the reason why they're dumping so much money in on Mike Rogers. Republicans see that as their very best chance to at least flip one seat in an election where they very well could lose control of the Senate because of all of these surprising states like Alaska, Ohio. They're dumping a bunch of money because they're scared of Sherrod Brown. They're looking at losing in North Carolina and Maine, and now Alaska. Republicans are running scared, and they look on Mike Rogers really as somebody who could save their majority.
If Mike Rogers were to flip that seat, there's no scenario where the Democrats have assumed majority in Washington at that point. I mean, that would be the deal breaker. He will be the nominee. He has token opposition, if he even ultimately has any opposition whatsoever. Do they even get on the ballot? Mike Rogers will be the nominee. They can spend this $45 million defining Mike Rogers against whoever the ultimate Democratic nominee is. The Democrats, ideally, I would like to have seen the Democrats have cleared the field for someone the way that it happened in 2024, where we had Mike Rogers effectively clearing the field on the Republican side, Alyssa Slotkin actually clearing the field on the Democratic side, and both parties were able to run a general election campaign all year. The Democrats don't have that luxury, but I think we're likely to see money coming in from national Democrats tattooing Mike Rogers between now and the primary anyway, because there's no
It's
scenario
already happening.
on earth where they're not going to be spending money in Michigan. They have to keep Michigan. And so they can't afford to let Mike Rogers run and build up a head of steam without taking heavy artillery fire in the meantime, because that would be a huge blunder on the Democrats' part if there isn't a shit ton of money to the tune of tens of millions of dollars invested, starting soon through August, when the Democrats are. When McMurrow and Stevens and El Sayed are beating the living shit out of each other, that's going to happen. Whoever wins that race is going to have no money left in their their campaign account. They're going to have to replenish that, but that's where the national money will make sure that there's not a hiccup. Whoever wins that primary will have spending coming in the day after the primary on their behalf.
There's never been a better time to own a TV station in Michigan than 2026. There will be a boatload of money. It's going to be a $200 million campaign for the Senate, and I wouldn't be surprised, but it's a $150 million campaign for governor.
Oh, yeah.
Those two races are going to be incredibly expensive, and we're just going to be inundated with those campaigns. The Rogers situation, though, is fascinating because you've got the Democratic Party in Michigan already going after him hard. Virtually every day you get a press release talking about Mike Rogers, tying him to Donald Trump repeatedly.
No. And so, yeah, I think that certainly it's way too early to say, Mike can't win. He got close in 2024. I think that was his best chance. And this climate is not one that favors Mike Rogers. I mean, the headwinds that we've seen, every opportunity for the Democrats to overperform or flip districts since Donald Trump assumed the White House again in January of 2025, the Democrats have overperformed by double digits, and it's very likely. We've talked a lot about the math in the governor's race, how the independent Mike Duggan convolutes that and gives Republicans a far better chance to flip that seat than they would in a two-way race. The Senate race is going to be a two-way race, and the Democratic tailwinds are going to help elevate whoever wins the primary in August, and will be something that Mike Rogers has to fly into the face of all year long, and it's not likely he's going to prevail, regardless of how much money outside groups pump in, $45 million or $450 million. Not that it's going to get that high, but it's not going to be enough for Mike Rogers to win in this climate.
Well, we've also got the entire legislature on the ballot in November as well, and we'll get into that in just a moment after a quick break with the Democratic leader of the State House, Ranjeev Puri.
More on a republic, if you can keep it, after these messages.
When most of us think about polling, the focus is on those campaign polls telling us which candidates are winning. But the most important polls are for businesses, local governments, and nonprofits assessing the needs and wants of their customers or constituencies.
Those are polls that guide policies and lead to institutional success. Those polls have to get it right, which makes the choice of a public opinion research firm critical. Epic MRA has been trusted for more than 4 decades to get it right. Our clients have included school boards, statewide nonprofits, corporations, as well as the candidates and news media who rely on us during political campaigns. Whether it's just a couple of questions or a full in-depth survey, we're here and ready to help.
You can reach us at epicmra.com.
Hi, Ben Franklin here with a message from our finance department. They've put together a small, exclusive collection of really bitchin' merch for you. We've got our exclusive Trump's Favorite Podcast mug, perfect for those long days of reading through the latest administration indictments. We've got mugs for lovers of sanity, mugs for opponents of dumb fuckery, and finely tailored shirts for lovers of getting dressed. Just head over to the merch store on our website. This square thingy will take you there, or click on the merch store button on arepublicpodcast.com. Support democracy, support freedom, wipe out dumb fuckery. Franklin, out.
Are you looking to stay ahead of the curve on Michigan's public policy landscape? Look no further than Michigan Information and Research Service Incorporated, or MERS. MERS is your go-to source for comprehensive, nonpartisan news and analysis on Michigan's government and public policy. But that's not all. A MERS subscription also gives you access to our powerful legislative monitoring and tracking tools. Stay on top of every bill, amendment, and vote with real-time updates, detailed reports, interactive committee transcripts, legislative analysis tools, and more. Whether you're a policymaker, lobbyist, or just a concerned citizen, MERS keeps you informed with daily updates, exclusive interviews, and detailed reports. Subscribe today and gain access to our extensive archives. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay ahead with MERS. Visit MERS.news to learn more and subscribe. That's MIRS.news. Don't miss out on the insights that matter most.
It's pretty easy for Democrats to be critics of Donald Trump, his policies, and his corruption. More important to most people, though, is answering the question, so what are you going to do? State House Democrats have answered, releasing their vision for a brighter Michigan. We're joined by House Democratic leader Ranjeev Puri, who led the development of the plan.
The son of Indian immigrants, Leader Puri made history in 2020 as the first person of color to represent his Canton, Michigan district and the first Sikh American in Michigan's legislative history. In his second term, he served as Majority Whip, making him the highest-ranking South Asian in state government nationwide. Remarkably, he is one of two first-generation Indian Americans in top legislative leadership, along with Senate Majority Floor Leader Sam Singh, also the son of Indian immigrants.
Leader Puri's leadership has earned him national recognition, including being named to the Council of State Government's 20 Under 40 Leadership Award class of 2023 and receiving the MERS Legislator of the Year Award in 2024.
Thank you for joining us again on A Republic, if you can keep it. It's great to have you. We'll get into some of the politics in the prospects for victory and flipping the House in November later, but you've just unveiled this vision for a brighter Michigan. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a culmination of a statewide listening tour. The reality is that no one in my caucus was happy that we lost our gavels in 2024, and so we went back to the drawing board to re-envision what Democrats in power can look like. We, as you alluded to, have an election coming up in November, and fully anticipate putting the work in to get those gavels back, and having a plan to execute is going to be a big part of that. Because the reality is that when we get the gavels back, there's a limited amount of time until you're running for re-election again. And so we want to be as efficient as possible to get as much done when we find ourselves with that opportunity. And that really just, as I said, was a culmination of a statewide listening tour that really went on for months, close to a year, in which we went across the state and held roundtables, talked in districts that are still held by us, but even also in districts that are trending away from us, and wanted to understand where the Democratic brand was, what was happening, what was working, what wasn't. And really, it came down to focusing on working people and working Michiganders across the state, and leading into those kitchen table issues of making sure that we are doing whatever we can to make people's lives easier, tackling this affordability crisis, ensuring that people have access to healthcare, making sure that we have quality public education, and we can go 83 counties wide, to making sure that regardless of where you're growing up, you're sure that your kid is going to be learning on a full belly, and with quality educators and in quality public schools, and then continuing to invest in our labor and economic development, and making sure that our communities are developing alongside all those values that are so important to what it means to be a Democrat in Michigan. So we're really excited with the product that we came up with, and more importantly, what those conversations meant for us to go into places where we typically might not be having that dialogue, but to really hear from the core Michiganders across the state. And so we're excited, and now we're excited to publicly unveil that, and ready to deliver on those messages.
I find it interesting that Republicans nationally and in the states seem to be emphasizing the cultural divide issues with a special emphasis on attacking transgender rights. And you stay away from the emotional issues and you focus really, like you say, on kitchen table issues. And it seems like that's the more effective way to approach people. They want to know, what are you going to do for me? Not no, what are you going to do? Not what are you going to do to some poor athlete 100 miles away from here?
That's right. I think it's really finding ways that we can invest in Michiganders and make their quality of life better. The reality is that the Republicans don't have a plan, and so they continue to lead with fear and sowing doubt and confusion. But Democrats are rooted in solving problems and solving real issues, and so I have no question that our value set is correct. But again, we want to focus on everything that the Republicans aren't doing to lay a stark contrast to the Republicans quite literally being very proud and pounding their chest on the minimal amount of bills that are getting done here in the state of Michigan. Whereas we know that right now there is just so many things not working for working families across the state. Things that we've already talked a little bit about today. The cost of gas and groceries continues to skyrocket. Housing is not affordable, and housing stock is not being built. Public education continues to need investment to making sure that we have the best schools here. Access to our health care is being cut in order to fund tax cuts for billionaires. Those things are not improving the quality of lives of Michiganders. And so we refocused our attention to making sure that those are the issues that we're focusing on, and those are the problems that we can solve.
Your counterpart in the state Senate, Senator Brinks, points out that there are literally dozens of bills, many of them bipartisan, that are sitting in the House. But Speaker Matt Hall seems very proud of the fact that he ain't moving anything. It's just sitting there. The bridge pointed out that in the first 3 months, you've only passed 7 laws because of the holdup in the House. How do you get Hall to do something?
I don't know. I think that is the $1 million question at hand, as to what he gets out of of being so proud of not doing anything. I think from my purview, from my perspective, things aren't working right now, and I'm can recognize the fact that in 2024 the election didn't go our way. So, like I said, we went back to the drawing board to figure out how can we deliver for working people across the state, 83 county wide. And so, we have a plan now to get stuff done, and that's going to take some courage to be bold and to really invest in making people's lives better. But you have a speaker here who is very proud and standing on his podium saying that I don't want to help you. I don't want to get anything done. And in fact, not only am I not getting anything done, I'm very proud that I'm not getting anything done for you. And so I think there is a very clear contrast to what I believe how we should be governing right now and what we should be doing. And so, like I said, I can't control what the speaker does or doesn't do, but I can sure as hell make sure that we have a plan for when we get those gavels back in November to be leading with purpose, to be leading to deliver for the people of Michigan.
When you were engaged, you and your caucus members, in your listening tour, as you put this agenda together, this prospective agenda for a more prosperous, affordable Michigan, uh, did you find that voters out there, people who don't live and breathe politics and what's going on in Lansing the way that we do, uh, do they have a sense of Lansing being dysfunctional? Did they know that very little is happening with the legislature because of the divided government? Is that something that's percolated through, or is that largely they're unaware and they're just frustrated with things because everything costs more?
Jeff, I have no idea what you're talking about. You mean that every Michigander isn't up to date on everything happening in Lansing? I would never think the sort. No,
Everybody
I mean,
needs a bridge subscription.
yeah,
Well,
that's right. No, I mean the reality is that a lot of people aren't in the know of everything that's happening in Lansing, and the federal government and the news that breaks out of DC kind of consumes a lot of people's limited attention to the state of our politics. But I think it is very easy to see that not much is being done by the House Republicans to separate themselves from the chaos coming out of DC. The reality is that those policies out of DC disproportionately affect us here in the state of Michigan. When you talk about tariffs or international conflicts and the failed economic policies coming out of DC, those disproportionately affect our state because of the auto industry we have here. Tariffs affect us. The international component parts, we have more international component parts than any other state in the country and more exposure to these tariffs. And so we should be doing whatever we can to standing up for our state of Michigan first and foremost, and not having fights along party lines. And so I think the frustration that we're hearing by and large is that there hasn't been that separation, especially from the Lansing Republicans, out of those policies that are going to disproportionately affect our state. And I'd be saying the same if it was true on the other side. And so the reality is that we're going to continue to stand up for Michigan, to making sure that we're doing whatever we can to set our state on a course to be as successful as possible and to set our economy up to have those jobs of the future. But the reality is that work hasn't been done. And I think what's confusing to me and what we've heard in these rooms is why the other side of the aisle would be so proud to not be doing anything, or be so proud to be continuing to handcuff itself to those failed policies out of DC.
Yeah.
When you had the trifecta, it was one of the most productive legislative sessions in the history of the state. And then you immediately went to split control, where virtually nothing got done, the least productive legislature in recent Michigan history. So the first step is winning back the majority and getting unified government again, unified one-party control. How does it look?
It looks great. I think, on the first part of that, the reality is that, out of the three legs of the stool, two of them remain the same. The only thing that changed was the Michigan House. And so we went from being one of the most productive legislative sessions to the least. And so the only thing that changed there is we have a Republican speaker who's not interested in doing anything because the other, the Senate and the governor remain the same. And so it's not hard to pinpoint kind of where this is all breaking down and what needs to change. And so the reality is that we feel really good about the body of work that we're putting together to recapture the gavels and to take control of the Michigan House. We have a wide map with seats in play all over the state. Because of the new fair maps that we're running on, there's going to be a number of seats that are up for election with the possibility of flipping from red to blue control this November. And so we've done a great job recruiting candidates up all across the state to the point where we feel that we have legislative opportunities to flip seats in all corners of the state.
Caucus politics in Michigan is where I cut my teeth. Back when I was a Republican, I've been involved in caucus campaigns when the wind was at my back and when the wind was blowing strongly in my face, and it certainly looks like this is going to be a year where the Republicans are having that wind in their face. I mean, every single shred of evidence out there since Donald Trump was sworn in a little over a year ago for his second term, Democrats have overperformed time and time again. But like you said, you still have to recruit candidates. The candidates have to do the work. You have to raise the money. You have to have the vision and the plan. But this is the kind of year where a bold message, bold strategy of offense, looking at seats that traditionally haven't even been in play to put Republicans, in this case, back on their heels. I remember sitting at Michigan Republican Party headquarters in 2006 and 2008 when the wind was blowing strongly in the face of Republicans at that time, and trying to figure out a strategy of who gets on the lifeboats, where can we stem the arterial bleeding we're going to have in November.
I appreciate that. I don't think anyone here has a magic 8 ball that they can look into to know exactly where this is all going to go. But I think, anyone that is monitoring just the metrics, electoral metrics objectively, can see that the the tailwinds for Republicans in 2024 have quickly shifted to headwinds for them in 2026. I would not want to be a Republican running for election in Michigan in 2026. It's going to be a tough year for them. And I think we can't, as House Democrats in the minority, can't control what the speaker puts up or doesn't put up for votes in the House and in the chamber. But what we can control is the campaign program that we build. And so we spent a lot of time scrutinizing our approach to the campaign, making sure that we're building a winning program. That started with campaign candidate recruitment. And so we feel really proud of the class of candidates that we've recruited, and in my opinion, maybe the best in a generation across the state, of people who are born and brought up in their communities, who truly understand their districts, and are people that are ready to put in the work to help flip their districts. And we're treating a lot of these candidates like they are the 56th majority making seat, and making them really invest in the campaign that they're running and the personal brand that they're putting on the line. And so we have candidates who are ready to raise the dollars and knock the thousands of doors that are going to be required to flip seats, because that's not an easy thing to do. But we have recruited candidates who are ready to put that work in and to do that. And so we've been traveling the state and are really happy with, like I said, the roster of candidates that we've recruited, and we're not taking anything for granted. But we know that Michigan is going to be in the spotlight nationally this November as probably one of the most, if not the most important state, with just the litany of elections that are on the ballot, up and down the ballot. And so we feel that the headwinds that we had in 2024 are now going to be tailwinds for us in 2026. And so when you layer that with the fact that we have just a really good set of candidates, and a really strong campaign program that we've assembled and put together, we feel it's going to be a very favorable year for us this November.
One of the things I find fascinating about the Democratic caucus on both sides is the diversity, something the Republicans certainly can't claim. But the House Democrats, you've got a little bit of everything there, no matter what metric you use, whether it's first generation Americans like yourself, or it's different religions, or it's different ethnicities. Whatever metric you use, it's represented in the Democratic caucus. Is this on purpose, or is this just something that developed naturally?
Well, I think it's emblematic of the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan doesn't look or think one certain way, and I think one thing where our caucus is battle tested is the reality is we're not afraid to disagree with each other. And I get that electorally or politically, legislatively, sometimes that can be a challenge. But if you use that diversity for its strength, it actually makes you a much more powerful caucus. And so I truly feel that our caucus embodies what it means to be a Michigander more than the other side. And it's not just kind of the diversity in the typical front. It's really the diversity of thought. It's the perspectives that come from all over the state, and the shared, the lived experiences that our caucus's members can share and educate each other, to really form policy that is going to improve people's lives of Michigan across the state, and not just in one corner of the state or just one portion of the state that looks or thinks a certain way. And so I take a lot of pride in our diversity. There's been times when we've disagreed with each other, but that's the sign of a healthy family, of those that can go into a caucus room, have that deliberation, have that debate, and come out ready to fight for majority this November, and to hopefully, like I said, deliver that majority and then deliver on the agenda to fight for working people.
I do have to take issue with both of you there. Just on the diversity on the Republican side, having been a Republican for most of my adult life, I would say you're not being absolutely fair. I mean, there are Irish and Germans and English and all kinds of other white people, even some women who make up the Republican caucus and Republican Party. And I just don't think it's fair to paint them with that anti-diversity brush that you guys just did. So that's just my two cents.
Sorry, Jeff. I'll amend that in the editing, I guess. What about term limits? You've had a relaxation of the term limits thanks to the voters, so that you're no longer gone almost right after you get there. Has that helped the process?
In theory, yes. I think it's a little too early still to kind of fully understand the impact that that's going to have. I think, anything is better than the system that we had in place. Doing restricting people to just 3 terms in the House wasn't good for anybody. It was really hard to take on transformational policy because as soon as someone learned the ropes, it was time to go. People were forced to kind of start looking for their next opportunity. Like it, right when they seemingly just got there. And so this in theory should create a more longevity of people who are able to spend their entire 12 years in one chamber and really become subject matter experts to take on serious issues and bigger and bolder policy ideas. And I think that layered on with the fact that we've seen kind of legislative control ping pong the last couple of cycles. Hopefully, over time, will craft the ability for transformational bipartisan policy to get done, and that's the sign of good policy being able to get done. But in the absence of that, right now in the early stages, we're seeing complete gridlock because both sides are fighting for these trifectas, and neither side is willing to, I guess, conform to or negotiate in good faith with each other's side. And so, we're going to have to be ready for both approaches. And in the short term, like I said, we feel really good about another Democratic trifecta and being able to shape policy the way we want. But in the medium and long term, if the pendulum continues to swing back and forth, hopefully that'll kind of course correct some of the narratives that currently exist, and then this mass exodus that used to exist when the term limits were in place. So I guess a long way of saying, TBD on the term limit change, but in theory, it should lead to better policy.
What about the budget? The process was pretty bad last time.
We've had very little legislative movement, and I think we can expect as we get closer and closer, deeper into the election year, we're going to see even less likelihood of bills passing through both chambers.
Can you go below zero?
But the budget, we either have to have a budget or we don't. What kind of politics do we expect here? Do we anticipate that Hall and the Republicans are going to try to play brinksmanship? Negotiate in Donald Trump style, seemingly against himself. As I was telling Walt offline, this week we saw Donald Trump negotiate with Iran as both Hitler and Neville Chamberlain in the same negotiation. Is Hall going to adopt some kind of very pugnacious style as he always does and try to extract something? Or do we expect that his caucus will say, don't do that to us? As we're out there on the front line, we don't want any uncertainty out there. Let's get this done.
We got to get out there to campaign
and get into the election. What do you expect?
Forcing me to kind of think in the headspace of Matt Hall is a dangerous place to be. But the reality is that, like I said, he was the only new piece in the Lansing institution. Leader Brinks, Governor Whitmer have passed multiple budgets on time every time, and then here came a new Republican speaker who was a rookie, and I think he made a lot of rookie mistakes. I think he thought he was doing more than he was actually doing. And in the end, I can only tell you what some individual Republican legislators have come and told me in passing is that they regret a lot of those votes, and it set them up to have some really tough and tenuous conversations in their district. You've seen that continue to play out just recently with the legislative appropriations cuts, the $645 million that the Republicans cut single-handedly, and it took projects out of districts all over the state, quite literally money out of the hands of people that needed it back into government coffers, which, if you told me that that's what Republicans wanted to do 10, 15 years ago. You never would have believed it. But the Democrats are the ones that want to remove red tape, get money in hands of projects that need it all over the state. That again, that's going to improve the lives of Michiganders. And so when we talk about the budget process, I don't know where Matt Hall is going to take it. I think if he learned anything, hopefully he's realized that his way of doing it was a failed way when he came in saying he was going to be the most transparent speaker of all time, then passed the budget without subcommittee votes, without any public deliberation, and just kind of sprung it on us, gave our side, about an hour of time to review an $80-some billion budget, and then expected votes. That's just not the way good governance is done. And so I don't know how it goes. I can tell you, though, that every day that he spends in Lansing is a day in which my candidates are going to be knocking doors in those districts. And so I don't think he has much motivation to be here, but we will see kind of how he plays his cards with this. And but I can tell you my side is ready for that fight. We feel that the minority party in the House had a very outsized role in the last budget cycle. We were able to deliver wins in a lot of spaces, and to make sure that we could protect some of these critical programs in healthcare and education funding. And we want to continue to do that this budget cycle, but realizing that the eye of the prize is on November of this year.
Representative Ranjeev Puri, thank you so much for spending some time with us and helping us understand a little bit, at least, of the maze that is the Lansing situation and the Michigan legislature. Thank you so much. Jeff, before we wrap up for the week, a personal note, if I may. April is Michigan Donate Life Month, a recognition of the state's organ donation program. 4 years ago, I was the recipient of a donated kidney. It changed my life, probably saved my life. A part of you can live on after death through the simple act of saying, yes, I want to pay it forward. And you can go a step beyond that through a living donation of a kidney or a portion of your liver. My donor was my brother. He's just as healthy today with one kidney as he was before the surgery. The Michigan Organ Donor Registry is a confidential database that documents an individual's decision to become an organ, tissue, or eye donor. Joining the registry is simple and secure. Michiganders can add their name online at michigan.gov/organ donation, one word, or at any Secretary of State branch office or self-service station, or on your state income tax return. And while you're at it, the donation of blood through the Red Cross is an easy way to save another life. Last spring, donated blood, in fact, saved my life.
As always, you can find us at our website at republicpodcast.com, where you can also click and subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch us instead of just listening to us. We're going to wrap up this episode of our podcast with a special tribute to the recently departed Pam Bondi, who's been sent by Donald Trump to a farm up north where she can run and run and run and run. It's a music video to enjoy the full wonderness of our tribute. Check it out at our Facebook studio.
Bye bye Bundy, I am gonna miss you, say sorry Blondie, you still have to go. Epstein files should have followed you away. You didn't shred them, that's why you'll have to pay. I'll miss the way you smirk when you call Adam Schiff a jerk. Your insult sheet was out of sight, but in the end it didn't work. We love you, Pamela, oh yes we do. We love you, Pamela, but you are through. Though you are in our hearts and always true. Oh, Pamela, we'll miss you.
And if the Republic is still standing, we'll return next week. I think Mark might actually be back. We'll find out. As always, thank you for your attention to this matter.
A Republic, if you can keep it, is a presentation of Michigan citizens for a better tomorrow.